Hello and welcome to episode 65 of Nintendo Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as a celebration of all of the things Nintendo, now on YouTube. My name is Kevin, and with me this week is Harrison. We are
Okay.
having some technical difficulties with Sean, so we're going to kind of postpone the Nintendo's Biggest Mistake tournament, the round we would have played this week to next week, because we're moving. We're packing up our bags and we're moving out of where we normally record our podcast, and we're gonna find a new service to use. And the old service is giving us some bugs on the way out. So yeah, we're gonna wait until we're all here next week for that. And Harrison and I have plenty to talk about otherwise. How you doing, Harrison?
Good. Yeah, we can't do the other Mario movie without Sean.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
I'm sure he's got
because
thoughts. He loves it so
yeah,
much.
right. You'll have a lot of positive thoughts, and you don't need me coming in here stinking up the place with my thoughts in that movie. So we'll just leave it.
While we are talking about the mistakes tournament, though, I did want to put an addendum on last week's episode. I don't know how this wound up leaving my notes because I know I put it in there, but for some reason it wasn't in the notes when we talked about it last week. And something I wanted to bring up about Nintendo sticking with cartridges for the Nintendo 64 rather than moving on to CDs is it was another reason it's an interesting choice is at the time a CD could hold 650 megabytes while the cartridge could only hold 64. It literally had 10 times the storage capabilities. So another thing just to throw in why that was a bad idea, even though it didn't win as the worst decision over the 3DS launch debacle.
That's so crazy thinking about sizes of things like back then. Like,
Yeah.
what was the game? Was it Mario 3 or it was some NES game where they decided to put it on a 32 megabyte cart instead of a 16, and developers were like really excited about that. They're like, yes.
it,
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it could be. I remember hearing that I think it was Super Mario World. They had a ton of leftover storage space because they weren't familiar with developing for the Super Nintendo yet, obviously. So, like, they made the whole game and they were like, we could have still fit so much more in here. We were underestimating what we'd be able to do. So, it could be that one.
Yeah. And then like in like the future, or like, do we get to a point where we just kind of hit a wall? Because, for example, with all of these Switch 2 rumors, if in fact the Switch 2 has 64 gigabytes of internal storage, that will mean that there's going to be games that will release on the Switch 2 which can't actually fit on the Switch 2 itself. Like there's going to be games that are going to be bigger than 64 gigabytes. Uh, so yeah, like I think eventually we'll hit a wall because I know like some, I don't know, Call of Duty games or whatever, or are like 100 gigs. NBA 2K is like 50 gigs. It's just ridiculous. Um, and I don't like how much space it takes up. Like more and more, I'm looking at like, oh, it's 20 gigs. I'll play it later.
I mean, I went all out with my Switch and put a terabyte memory card in there, and I think I could have gone smaller. I was a little overzealous. I'm like a little over 500 right now, I think, gigs.
I could fill it up. But I have 256 in my Steam Deck and my Switch, and usually I'm like, if I'm like if I'm like at that point where I'm like full, I just need to like archive, delete some stuff because I'm never playing 256 gigs at one time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's just the inconvenience of it. But we'll reach those rumors here in a bit. I did want to follow up with what we talked about last week. Last week we talked about, you brought up games that might have too much content, or can a game have too much content? I wanted to follow it up with what is a short game, or in your opinion, a short game that you've invested tons of hours into? And I left you your question. If you were to estimate, how many hours do you think you've invested into Mario RPG?
Well, I saw it in the notes ahead of time, so I was able to think about it. And I honestly, I know I've beaten that game start to finish at least 10 times. So that's, in my estimate, it's got to be at least 200 hours right there for Mario RPG, but between the two versions. I've 100%ed it a few times, but obviously there's other times where I just went from the start to the finish. So yeah, I'd say about 200 hours for that. I also have a lot of hours logged in short games like Toe Jam and Earl, Super Mario World, which we mentioned earlier. People forget how short The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past is, too. You can finish that game in like 12 to 16 hours. So that's
Right.
another one.
So, do you have like a number one? Like, do you have a short game that you've played the most?
Probably one of those three. A Link to the Past, like I had a time in my life where I was just kind of constantly playing that game, so it might be that, especially because of its availability on like every Nintendo console practically since it came out. Like I think the Nintendo 64 is the only one that didn't put out A Link to the Past. Uh so they just keep putting it out and I keep downloading it and playing it. So yeah, probably that one.
Yeah. And for me, it was Super Mario Brothers 3, which I've easily put 1,000 hours into, which is crazy. But if I think like from the time I was, because Super Mario Brothers 3 came out when I was like a few months old. So by the time I was like 4 years old until I was like 8 years old, I probably put in 1,000 hours just during that time. Um, because it was like, didn't have that many games. It was my favorite game, and it's just a game that you can just play like over and over again. Which is crazy because I think like I didn't finish it until I had the option of save states. So
Yeah, well,
yeah,
owning games was so different back then too, especially like you said with save states and saving progress. It it was a perfectly fine option to just rent a game when, especially if it only had a password system. You had your passwords in a notebook, so you could pick up right where you left off and rent a different copy, and it wouldn't be a problem. I don't think I
right.
really started owning a library of games until the Super Nintendo. I think on the original NES, I mostly rented and I owned like 3 or 4 games.
Right, right. I don't know. Like I didn't own that many games, and I was usually a generation behind. Like we had NES during the Super NES. I kind of got N64 towards the end, and yeah, I didn't own that many N64 games. It might have not been until like GameCube era when I actually like started doing like small work, making small money, being able to like buy used games. I remember buying a refurbished Dreamcast and like buying a lot of like used games that were like just gone. Um, so yeah, should we move on to some news for today?
Well, yeah. Did you want to talk about that Delta emulator?
Do, do we, do, yeah, yeah.
It came. I just wanted to bring it up. I saw you put it in here, and I remember when it came up on online. The day it dropped, my Twitter feed was just nothing but people posting games they were playing on it, and it's like I'm glad people have access to something like this where they're happy with it, but I can't do touch screen controls, man. I just cannot do touch screen controls. I have my my little portable emulator machine. It's got buttons. I like that. Uh but how's your experience with it, Ben?
I wanted to just try it out to see what it's like, and typically and it's not a moral thing. I've mentioned on here many times. Typically, I don't emulate games that I don't already own. Um,
Hmm.
and it's not. It has nothing to do with like I wouldn't feel bad. I just typically don't play older games, or if I did, it's probably something that's on like the Switch Online service that I haven't played. But anyways, um, I'm it's extremely intuitive, and it's just a very like surreal experience because I've downloaded like third party applications on my iPhone, and it's always a huge hassle to do it. Whereas if you have Android, Android's like do whatever you want, like lock it, unlock it, third party, first party doesn't matter. So it's pretty surreal to see Apple finally opening that door and doing it with an application that is extremely intuitive, extremely easy to use, and almost to the point that it's a little bit too easy for me. Like to have a, I prefer to have a few more options in my emulators, like having like hotkeys for save states, things like that. And I think it's a great option if you're someone who doesn't game or someone who might be a little bit interested in the emulation scene. But for someone like me, like I have like my Steam Deck, I have my Vita, I'm good to go on the emulation part. But I
Do
wanted
we
to
think
try it out.
Nintendo's going to have this thing taken down eventually, though? Like, I don't know how. I haven't seen anyone really talking about that, and I feel like there's been a few emulators that have gotten taken off the App Store.
I don't know how it works. I
Yeah, me either.
really I don't know. I don't know how it doesn't how especially with wait, is it Yuzu? Especially with Yuzu going down, how Delta doesn't go up in the App Store and get taken off right away. And it's been like the number one app for for weeks now, to the point where like a lot of like I follow the like the ROM hack scene for Pokemon. Like a lot of those games are getting like jumps because people are like all of a sudden like, oh, I can play this game on my iPhone, you know. So I would think it gets taken off, but I don't know the history between Apple and Nintendo as far as like legal battles go. I
Yeah.
really don't know the history of that company because they do work together, and they are quite similar companies in lots of ways. So it's just pretty crazy. Like emulation on an Android phone, no problem. Yeah, like you have lots of options. Emulation on the fact that I can emulate a DS game flawlessly on an iPhone is pretty crazy. Um, Not the technical side of it, just like how easy it is to do now. Um, so I don't know the future. um, I don't really understand any of it. I'm just I'm just I can't believe we're here at this point.
Yeah, and if anyone out there is looking for a non-touchscreen solution to a portable version of these games, I have to recommend. I can't recommend enough. I mean, obviously Steam Deck is out there, but I love my Ambernick. I have the RG. Oh, I just knocked it over. The RG 405V. It's by Ambernick. It's an amazing device. Plays everything up to GameCube and Wii. Um, and I haven't tried any Wii on there yet because I have no idea what the motion controls would be like. But the GameCube games run fine. So yeah, if you're looking for something with actual buttons, go with that. And
Right.
now,
And
oh
go ahead. I'm ready to move on. Let's move on.
yeah, I was just gonna say, and now our top story. The Switch accessory manufacturer that seemingly leaked some details about the Switch 2. So this dropped like right after we recorded last week, so it's kind of week old news, but we haven't talked about it yet. Is that the long and the short of it is manufacturer who claims that they've gotten details on the Switch 2 without actually seeing it, have leaked some details. And the one everyone seems to be talking about, so we could probably focus on this one, is the Joy-Cons apparently being magnetic, and that's how they connect to the Switch. And I had a few thoughts on this. That my first thought is, even if this rumor isn't true, they've definitely redesigned those Joy-Cons because of the drift issue. So they don't want to go through that again. If those of you who don't know, Nintendo had a problem with those original Joy-Cons having drift issues, and they've had to like issue refunds and repairs and stuff like that. So they definitely don't want to go through that again. The other thought that I had was a lot of people, if they play their Switch handheld a lot, that track, the groove that they slide into, it ends up getting like warped backwards a little bit. And I think maybe, I don't know if the magnets are an answer to that, but what are your thoughts?
I'm just gonna start with the big picture. I just don't believe anything this company is saying. Um,
Okay.
Although they released a story, a post. So there's 6 details in this post, and I think all of them they all sound good. Like okay, so number one, the Switch 2 will support existing Joy-Con and Pro controllers. Okay, that sounds fine. Um, Support is very broad. That doesn't mean that the Joy-Cons are going to connect to a Switch 2. It just means they're going to be supported, like you could play it through Bluetooth. Okay?
Yeah, like when you have your screen on that little kickstand it has.
So that's fine. Number two, Switch 1 cartridges will be backwards compatible, but Switch 2 cartridges will not fit into the Switch 1 slot. Okay, number two, that's easy because they've been doing that since Game Boy. Like where they add like a little like notch, in the cartridge, and then the cartridge doesn't fit.
Yeah, exactly. The
So
main comparison people have been making is 3DS and DS.
exactly. Exactly. New Joy-Cons number three, as you mentioned, which will have like a suction electromagnetic. I don't know what that means, but okay. Number three, easy. Dock is still USB-C, 4K image output, easy. Number five, kickstand has a damping bracket for improved angle adjustment. This could refer to the patent that we talked about a few weeks ago, but it could talk about that you can maybe lean your dock at an angle. I'm not sure. But, anyways, and then number six is 8-inch screen with a 1080p resolution. This has been rumored for a while. 8-inch screen, like if I'm looking at my OLED, which is 7 inches, 8 inches would feel big.
Yeah, that's a pretty big screen.
Yeah, that's a pretty big upgrade, especially if you compare it to the original Switch. But the point is, all of these sound good, which is why like I I would almost default to like, oh yeah, like it sounds like it could be true, and it sounds like like if it was a prediction that ended up being true, that makes sense. But considering that it came directly from Mobipad's website and not any other like news source, and then considering just the whole motive behind it, because I have to start with why did they do it? And it's for reach. They did it for reach. They did it for exposure, and they got it because everyone, and I mean everyone, has been talking about this company. I mean, I knew about this company because they make like turbo controllers, um, but I mean, I was reading Thai news sources on this company yesterday. Uh, so, and then if Nint- and then, in my opinion, this is not even worth Nintendo addressing unless there's some sort of like legality towards it. It might be better for Nintendo to just ignore it and 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 I don't know, like I think Mobipad got exactly what they wanted, which is why I'm defaulting to thinking none of it's real. How about you?
Well, I think, like you said, a lot of it is just repeat rumors that we've heard before. Um, and also, I don't know, the magnetic thing, I don't think that could possibly work and not be harmful for the hardware unless it's just being assisted by magnets. I don't see magnets being strong enough to actually just click it on there in a way that's safe for a screen to be right next to it. You know what I mean? Um, the other thing though that I didn't see in this report, but I've seen other places and I can't find the source, but I definitely saw them talking at some manufacturer about how Nintendo is already preparing its OLED model. And if that's true, that'll be hilarious if they launch this system and then about a year, only a year in, launch that. Because I'm definitely getting one, no matter when it happens. I deeply regret not getting an OLED for my original Switch, and at this point, I feel like it's too late because I might as well just wait for this one. So we'll see what happens with the Switch too. Um, but yeah, I thought that was funny. And you're right. The rest of it is just repeat rumors and stuff where it's like, if this isn't true, people aren't even going to remember that it was rumored. Like nobody's going to remember that there was a rumor about the kickstand having improved angles uh, after we get the actual announcement and we're all focused on the real news.
I think so. The magnets. So I read somewhere they're supposed to be like suction. So I think I think the magnets might still be that you slide your Joy Cons into the system, but it'll be more supported because
Oh,
I
so
know
they don't
like
like slide out? Because sometimes that happens to me on my controller. Not when I'm playing handheld mode, but when I'm playing with this Joy Cons clicked into the controller. Sometimes they start to slide out of that little plastic thing.
oh I have my original OLED Joy Cons. I never replaced them, and if I'm playing like an intense game handheld, I'll disconnect my controllers every once in a while because they're starting to wear out where it can like not disconnect completely, but it'll disconnect from the actual system. Uh, so
My other thoughts about this though are that the rumors are coming so fast at this point and we're getting so many details, some of them repeated details but from different sources. um I think that we can start to believe the rumor of a June reveal, that we might get a reveal for this thing next month, because yeah, I don't know if they could hold out much longer. Like, do we really feel like they could hold out until, I don't know, the fourth quarter of this year to announce something that's coming out at the beginning of next year? I don't know how much
sure,
longer Nintendo can keep this a secret, basically.
I think they can. Um, it I don't know. Like if they announce it if they announce it in like November for like a March release, I'm just spitballing. I don't think it matters in the long run. We're buying it regardless.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know.
I think you're right though.
I feel like
I
they're
think
going
you're
to
right.
start generating some hype soon before the whole can of beans gets spilled.
Yeah. I think you're right. I would not be surprised if next month we just get a name. Like
Because the
that's it.
closer they get to basically revealing this thing, the more people have had access to developing games for it, developing accessories for it, developing, even just things like a case, or or if you're somebody who's developing like I don't know, all kinds of random stuff that goes into a system. Uh, and they're gonna no more than most people. And yeah, they all sign NDAs, but that's how stuff gets leaked.
Right, right. So with MobilePad, I mean, if they signed an NDA, I'm assuming that there's legal action. If they didn't sign an NDA, I'm assuming that this is just all fake, and they're a third-party hardware developer that has makes Nintendo accessories but has no association with Nintendo itself.
My biggest
Uh,
hope out of this list, if I had to pick one of these things to be true, I really do hope the Joy Cons are larger this time, like they're saying. They're I remember even day one when I first had my Switch on launch day. That was like my first impression of the system was, oh, these buttons are kind of small. Like they seem like they're designed more for children's hands. Which you get the Pro controller and you've got other options out there, but it was definitely the first thing I noticed about the system before I had it turned on.
right. Well, I they also included that they're going to be adding what I assume would be like an L3 R3 button, and they're also going to be adding a function button below the below the home button,
Oh yeah,
or
yeah, that too.
or
Yep.
I below the home button on the right Joy-Con. So that part of the rumor would make me excited as well. Like a function button. Nintendo, are you going to give us? Are you going to give us options? Like, can we?
Well, they got a
Can
camera now, if you
it's like
believe the
can
rumors. So
it's like can we map those back buttons to whatever we want? Like because that would all be very exciting for me. Uh, so I like all of the rumors. It's just nothing new. So I just feel like I could have written this blog post and put it out the exact same way. So it all for me it all goes back to motive. There's a reason why they wanted to put that information out there, and the motive was obviously exposure, real or not real. So everyone else speculate.
and then there's another rumor circulating. Pi Pyoro is a leaker on. I think we've talked about this leaker before for other Switch 2 stuff, but um, they are teasing something to do with the Nintendo World Championships. It's not entirely clear what this is, but they basically posted an image of a Nintendo World Championships from 1990 NES cartridge in a very cryptic way. This leaker has gotten, I can't remember what, but I know they did get some stuff right that we've reported on this podcast before. So they do have it was Switch Online stuff. So they said, they put out a cryptic tweet about stuff that was coming to Switch Online and then it did. So they've gotten some stuff right before. What this has to do with Nintendo World Championships, I don't know if they're going to start having them again. The last time they had them was in 2017 when the Switch first came out. Uh, it could be the Nintendo World Champions cart coming to Switch Online. I don't know why they would do that, but possibility. What do you think?
I don't know. Like I I always love those ideas of like Nintendo kind of. I always say living in this generation, but just doing more things that are similar to what other video game companies or platforms do, I guess. So yeah, like if Nintendo in any way was going to be more involved in competitive gaming or esports, I think that's really cool. As far as the rumor goes, I have no thoughts. How about you?
My first thought before I started seeing people predict that Nintendo would be hosting another World Champions tournament was my first thought was, oh, the World Champions cart coming to Switch Online because they have so many weird things on Switch Online already, so many like Japanese imports and expansions of games and stuff that I could totally see this going to Switch Online for people who want to play a World Championship cart and see what it was like.
Has it ever been ported before?
Not to my knowledge. I think wouldn't it be a lot like I think it's a lot like that 1 2 3. Well, not exactly like 1 2 3 switch, but it's like quick versions of games basically. So it's like a remix almost. An NES remix. That's what I was thinking of. Not 1 2 3 switch.
I can see it. Like I don't remember at the time, but is there a reason why it was around in 2017? Is there a reason why it wasn't around after 2017? I
Yeah, that I don't know. I mean, I'm
I
sure
don't know.
2020 affected uh, something in there if they were planning to bring it back, but I don't know about 2018 and 19. So we just don't have enough information on this. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens, and then say Pyoro was right with whatever the answer was.
Yeah.
He's vague enough to take the credit. And then the only other thing that's been on everybody's lips this week is the frame rate of Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. So uh, I'm very excited for Thousand Year Door. I've been telling my wife about this game. I'm that excited about it. I explained to her, like, listen, this is a game that I've wanted forever. I have come so close in the past to spending like $120 on an eBay copy because I wanted to play it. And every single time I was like, but maybe Nintendo will remake it someday. So I'll hold off. And now they finally are, and I can get it at a reasonable price. And yeah, now people are complaining about this frame rate thing. It doesn't make a difference to me. Um, Origami King ran at 30 frames per second. It was fine. Um, it's they're clearly prioritizing the visual storybook nature of the game over, like, 60 frames per second is important for fast-paced games like a first-person shooter or something, not a turn-based RPG that's trying to look like a storybook. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. I don't know what the original. I'm assuming the original one was at 30.
No, the original, that's why there's controversy, is the GameCube original version ran at 60. So
Oh,
people are basically acting like something was taken away from them. But this is a much more detailed remake.
okay. Well, that's well. Then my reaction is that it's strange. I think I think a reason why people talk about this a lot, especially online, is that one, it's not going to matter with this game, but also we can acknowledge that it is different because there's people I see people say like, oh, like I play games like 30. I can't see the difference between 30 frames or 60 frames or 40 frames and 60 frames, and that's just not true. Like there is a difference, but does the difference matter? It depends on what game you're playing. And for this one, especially for me who is going to play it on handheld, um, it doesn't matter to me. And and if it wasn't for this, people are going to find other things to complain about, which is my next news item, but I'm holding off on that.
Oh yeah, we can get right into it. The only other thing really worth mentioning about this is that one of the developers of Bayonetta Origins, um, Cereza and the Lost Demon. I don't play Bayonetta, so I don't know if I'm saying that right, but yeah, they came out in defense of this, basically making a huge Twitter thread that, long story short, summarized like, well, when you're developing a game, you have to decide what's important and what's not important. And I'm sure the developers decided this was the best way they could release the game. I guarantee you they're not doing this to be lazy, is the basic summary of what he said.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I guess it's a bit odd to get. I'll call it a downgrade. I know it's not that, but to go from 60 to 30. But yeah, for a game like this, I don't think it's going to matter at all.
Yeah. So let's go into more detail on Paper Mario Thousand Year Door.
So and this is a silly one, and I mean it's silly to me. Um, the main news outlets that are reporting on this are I'll just say they clearly lean in a certain direction, and it's probably not representative of me or anyone else on this podcast. Um, I Kevin, you played Thousand Year Door, right? I forget.
No, Thousand Year Door I missed, which is why I was like at one point in my life considering spending $100 on a copy because I
Oh,
was
that's
like, I
right.
want to play this game, but like, I missed out on it. That was during the years that I kind of was a little bit off video games before I came back towards the end of the Nintendo Wii.
So there's two parts to Thousand Year Door that they either changed or just took away. The first one is in Thousand Year Door. There was a cat calling scene with a Goombella,
Hmm.
and I remember some Reddit discussions about this. I don't remember anything when it first came out, but they took that part out, and it has like things saying like "What's up, baby?" Like "Who's that hottie you got there with you?" You know, "You're a fine looking Goomba." Like and the outlets and there's like news outlets that are talking about this, you know, in a way that's like, oh, look at the PC culture, everything. Guys, here's the main thing. T- first thing, times change, you know, attitudes change, preferences change, and secondly, most important, it does not affect any part of this game whatsoever. So shut up about it is what I want to tell people. Like, like usually we don't get like we are not political on here at all, but like if you're going to politicize something like this, I'm just going to say, guys, don't play it then. Don't play it. Like if this authenticity or this like, oh, this PC culture ruining games, none of it's real. I can show you plenty of examples of how it's not real, and Nintendo can do whatever they want with those games. So my rant's over. Is there anything that you want to?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, it's typical. Like anytime people make a change, anytime they make a change in a remake, people complain. I remember when the Mario RPG game was coming out, there were people up in arms about a lot of just pop culture references that were taken out of the game. Most likely because they don't think kids today would understand them because they were very
Right.
90s specific pop culture references. So, and people were upset about it, and it's like they find that they're upset about the fact that something was changed and then they justify it afterwards. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this was changed, that makes me upset. PC culture is ruining everything. Or, oh, they took out this pop culture reference. Why are you messing with my childhood? Like, it's just they just don't like change. It's the bottom line, and then they'll figure out why they don't like it later.
Yeah. I mean, even looking back at the time, I don't like. I think it was kind of an odd choice by Nintendo, and I imagine if I was playing this game at the time, I would have been like, well, that's kind of silly, and that's kind of like, I mean, because it's already like a, you know, a Goombella, you know, it's already very very silly, but just to spend any energy on it, and the fact that like I'm spending energy on this podcast talking about these people might make it even worse. But yeah, like if it was changing something that changes big parts of the game, then whatever. But like we need to live in the fact that like some things that were funny back then aren't funny now. Some things that were popular then, some things that were appropriate back then aren't appropriate now. And and that's fine. Like it doesn't have to go any deeper than that. I think that's as far as it needs to go.
I agree. And I think that's a good time to segue on into our spotlight game, unless there was anything else you wanted to talk about.
Oh, let's go.
So this week we are shining a spotlight on the Super Nintendo game Super Poyo Poyo 2, which I had a hard time finding release information on this because whenever it's an arcade game port, it always tells you like when it came out in the arcades. And so I don't have that information this week. I know it's a game that was only released in Japan and didn't find its way over here, I don't think, until the Switch Online. So it's got a big fan base. And I saw that you wrote in here, you read my mind, comparing it to Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. I feel like you could hold up Mean Bean Machine and this game, and it's like that meme from The Office where it's like they're the same picture.
Right, right, and like Dr. Robotnik, Poyo Poyo 2, Kirby's Avalanche all came out between 94 and 95. Like they all came out pretty much within a year of each other, and they are all pretty much the same game.
Yeah,
I
and I
mean,
wish
like,
I knew that about Kirby's Avalanche ahead of time because I would have made this a week where we reviewed both of them. But I don't know if it plays differently, so I'm not gonna just assume and rank it now. But yeah, I wish I knew ahead of time, or I would have put them both in the spotlight this week.
did not even think about it. And hey, there's always more Kirby for us. There's always more Kirby.
Because it's almost like they're using the exact same sprites. Like they're these weird goo drops, different colors. You match the colors. They're the same game, all three.
Right, right, and think about all of the complaining, mostly from me, the complaining we do about shovelware
Listen to this.
and
So I pulled up the Wikipedia page and for Kirby's Avalanche, and under gameplay, the first sentence is the gameplay is the same as in Super Poyo Poyo. So not only, but the look is the same too. You just kind of changing the backgrounds.
I think the big difference between Poyo Poyo and Poyo Poyo 2 is there's an unlimited mode, and I think the four-person multiplayer was different as well. I did want to include. I think so. It came out the first time it came out in North America was for the Wii. But here's the
Okay.
funny part: if you look at the Wikipedia page, I'm looking at it here. So the Mega Drive version came out on the Wii's Virtual Console, remaining untranslated. In 2016, 3DS as it came to 3DS as part of the 3DS, the Sega 3D Classics Collection game pack. The game itself remained untranslated. An arcade version for Nintendo Switch under the Sega Ages Poyo Poyo 2 was released in 2019. That version remained untranslated. Super Poyo Poyo 2 was released on Switch Online. That remained untranslated.
Huh.
So like it's just funny to read through it. Um, like like Kevin, what is it? Is it caring too much about authenticity, or is it Nintendo being extremely lazy? Especially the fact that like you can download ROMs with English translations of this game. So which one is it?
It's weird because Nintendo has been caught in the past. I remember back during the Wii days reading an article about how a lot of the games on the Wii Virtual Console were ROMs that you would find on the internet. Like they were caught using like internet ROMs as the version you got on the Wii. So so it's funny that they didn't just continue that trend and be like, "Oh, we found a fan translation and we're taking it because we own the rights, so you can't sue us. We could sue you." Um and just going back to this Wikipedia page real quick, I'm skimming Kirby's Avalanche. And another funny thing I found is in 1997, Electronic Gaming Monthly ranked Kirby's Avalanche and Mean Bean Machine collectively as number 84 because they're the same game,
Same
basically.
thing.
So I don't know why Super Poyo Poyo wasn't in there, but they collectively ranked them as one game.
Because it wasn't available, right? It wasn't available in North America.
No, this was in
We
1990. Oh yeah, North America. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, we should include that that this was a huge arcade release. Like they said that in Japan, it was the biggest arcade release since Street Fighter Two. So anytime you put like Street Fighter in the same sentence, you're doing something good. And it was ported, even though it was regional, it was ported to like every console at the time. Very popular game when it came out. I don't really like. We haven't really touched on anything on the gameplay at all. It's fine. We have Dr. Robotnik, which I think is more cool. We have lots of other puzzle games that we can play. Um, so for me,
Mhm.
this went pretty low because of just having other or better options to play, I guess.
I agree because I already had Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine kind of low at 41. So I just put this at 42 simply because they're basically the same game, but Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is Sonic the Hedgehog, which I'm a little more familiar with, and the menus are in English. So that right away is more of a win for me. So if I can understand what I'm reading, I'm a little more comfortable. Mean Bean Machine gets the edge. And the game below that, if you're curious, is the Game Boy Advance version of Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2, which, if you remember, obviously Super Mario World's a great game, but the Game Boy Advance version controls super awkward. They only had two buttons to work with. No good. Um, and above it is the Nintendo 64 Sin and Punishment.
Right. So this one I also ranked below. Let me see where I have. So I had Dr. Robotnik at at number 48, and I'm putting Poyo Poyo 2 at 51. So like above that is NES Ice Hockey. Below that is Exevious, which I still don't know how to say. Um, but and yeah, I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. It's on the system. Doesn't take up a lot of room. There's much better options, and yes, it's it's not in English. And I don't see I don't see why there would ever be a controversy if Nintendo directly reached out to a translator and said, "Hey, like we want to put your translation on our service," and they could say, "Okay, give us money," and then they could say, "No, this is our game, this is our property, we're taking it," and then that's all that would happen. But I would think also that the people who translate those games would say, okay, sure, like awesome, like you know, it's awesome that you can contribute to that. Makes no sense. I did want to close this part out for me by saying, you've done over 60 games at this point on this podcast. How are
Almost
you
70.
feeling? Yeah, how are you feeling at this point? Like, does your memory feel good? Do you feel more informed about these games? Is it hard for you to recall certain games? Because I gotta say, like, for me, I haven't played the majority of these games. I've learned a lot, but my memory is starting to get a little bit like
There's some I remember more than others for sure, and there's definitely some that I've been like I've discovered through doing this, I guess you could say. Like Musha on Sega Genesis. I really like that game, and I don't think I would have ever just randomly thrown that on. And that shoot 'em up game was really good. But there's some stuff that I barely remember just because it was so long ago, like back in the day. Like I remember in the beginning we had a big run of caveman games like Spanky. I don't remember Spanky's Quest. I should probably throw it on again because I have it ranked so low that I should really see if it really does deserve. It's my number 65 on the list. So I don't remember it, but apparently I hated it type thing. I remember Kung Fu Heroes. I couldn't figure out how to play, and that's what I have ranked right above it. Um, I just could not figure out the controls at all. But yeah, some stuff I've discovered, some stuff I've forgotten. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, I mean, more is better. I mean, if anything, I've at least learned a little bit. But my retention for like playing, maybe if I play a game a few hours in a week and then I don't pick it up, my retention is not so great. Um, but but I mean, I've learned a lot over this past year. So that's the whole point.
Well, let's find out what we're playing next time, and maybe we'll remember playing it, maybe we won't. All right, so you're definitely going to remember playing this because it's a classic. We're playing Sega Genesis classic Sonic the Hedgehog 2 next week. A lot of hot takes going to come out of this one, I feel like. Not the biggest Sonic fan, but this probably, I'll admit, of all the Sonic games I've played, this is probably my favorite Sonic the Hedgehog game. So I will say that. But yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 next week. You excited, Harrison?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
good one.
Yeah. Let's leave it. Let's leave it. That's for next week.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have any thoughts you want to get to us about what you think about Sonic the Hedgehog 2, you can leave it below in the comments on YouTube or Spotify. People are actually commenting now, so thank you. I should have gotten their names together, but thank you for those of you who left comments on YouTube. It was very much appreciated. There was also a Spotify comment as well. So keep those coming. We want more participation, and if we get more, maybe I'll actually write the names down and talk to you back on the show. And yeah, so comment there. Let us know what you think of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Let us know what you think of the Super Mario Brothers 1993 movie, which we'll be talking about next week too. And let us know if you want your Switch 2 to have magnets. So password, comment down below. Nintendo magnets is the password this week. Keep in mind, we're Nintendo fans, not Nintendo experts. So if we got something wrong, just be nice about it and sound off in that same comment section. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.